So once again, I really want to thank everyone for joining us, for taking the time out of your busy schedules. So nice to see you all here. And we're here at quite a strange time. It's a time of joy and it's a time of grieving for both sides. And I'm sure, like me, you're all having very mixed feelings, very mixed emotions, have been renewing your news thread throughout the weekend. And Hand in Hand really does experience this for both peoples. And while we all experience this fragile, everyday turmoil, Hand in Hand does offer a long-term answer to building together friendship and shared society and partnership. And while Hand in Hand is all about what happens in the classroom and on the playground, our future is also being built by our parents. Our parents not only meet twice every day as they drop off the children and pick them up again in the afternoon, but it manifests itself through play dates, birthday parties, and the forging of communities amongst the parents. The parents meet as part of our community project regularly, and they're having their own learning experience and their own educational journey of getting to know the other. So today we're going to hear from two such parents. And before I do introduce them, just a wee bit of housekeeping. If you have questions, please put them in the chat. We will desperately try to get to as many of them as possible. We won't get to all of them, and then Lee will at some point will very generously offer to add some of the answers in the chat. If you have any technical problems, please message Andrea Dyer, and she'll try to help you out with that. And finally, since there are an awful lot of us here on the call, I'd like to ask everyone please to mute yourselves so we can all listen and hear the speakers uninterrupted. So let me welcome Dr. Kani Lahad and Rana Farhan. These are two inspiring mothers from Haifa, and they're both also hand-in-hand community leaders. They're going to share their journeys, what they went through, the challenges and the growth of the Haifa community in recent years. Rana Farhan has been a pillar in the school and community since its founding, and Kani joined us 4 years ago and has since played a key role in various community initiatives. So Kani, can I invite you to begin? Share your story.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Carney, and I'm the mother of Geva and Dekel, 8-year-old twin boys in third grade and Hand in Hand, and Yara, who's 2.5, and she's in the Hand in Hand nursery. Um, and yeah, as Alon said, we've been part of Hand in Hand in the last 4 years, and kind of my journey into Hand in Hand, I think, is kind of rooted in my childhood. So I had the very unique experience, I think, as a Jew here in Israel, of growing up with a Palestinian best friend. So I went to a semi-private school in Jerusalem. I grew up in Jerusalem. That to this day is considered a very academically kind of a good school academically, and it's also quite a liberal leaning school. And out of the 100 and something kids in the grade, we had two non-Jewish Arab girls whose parents wanted to send them to the school so that they could get kind of the best education possible. And one of them was Ruba, who I obviously told her today that I would also be speaking about her, and she sent her blessing. So Ruba and I started together in the 7th grade. At this point, she knew mostly Arabic and English and didn't know much Hebrew. And I knew English and she seemed cool. So I appointed myself to be her translator. And we became best friends and, as I said, are good friends to this day. And I think growing up with Ruba by my side kind of, yeah, allowed me to see things in a complexity and a duality that I think a lot of the times Jews growing up in Israel don't have. So when we were teenagers, it was the second Intifada. There were horrific suicide bombings in Jerusalem. Even a mother of a boy who was with us in the grade was unfortunately murdered in one of these bombings. And obviously there was a lot of tension during this time. And I remember this one instance where there was a group of boys being rowdy and kind of saying racist slurs, and Ruba was next to me and I could just feel her shrinking. And I think I had, a lot of these experiences with her where we went through things together, and I felt things kind of the way probably not on the same level, but on the way she felt them. And it kind of brought into focus for me how we're all human and how it's unfair. A lot of the times, Ruba herself was very close to a bombing on the way to school once. And yeah, and just the complexity, I think, of the situation. And as Alonso said, I'm a physician, I'm a hematologist, and I think the Israeli healthcare system is kind of like this bubble of what could have been, of people. There really are people of all faiths working together and becoming friends also while working together and treating people of all faiths. And I do think that we give good treatment to everyone. And my parents are also physicians, so kind of, with this kind of, I would say, like, background and my day-to-day life at my work, it just, when it came time to find an educational system for our kids, it just didn't make sense to put them into something that's segregated. And we moved about 5 years ago to Haifa, and Haifa is a mixed city, unlike Jerusalem, where there's East Jerusalem, which is Arab, and Palestinian, and West Jerusalem, which is Jewish, and there's total segregation and a lot of the times hatred and violence. Haifa is mixed. We live in a neighborhood called Kababir. Jews and Arabs live here together in the same building. You have Jewish families, Arab families. When we go down to play in the playground, we hear Hebrew and Arabic. But when time comes for kindergarten, the municipality sends the Jewish kids, an invitation to enter the Jewish educational system, and the Arab families receive a letter sending them into the Arab educational system. And it just didn't make sense to me that if we're living in a mixed neighborhood and the kids hear Hebrew and Arabic in the playground, why won't they be hearing Hebrew and Arabic at school? So we registered to Hand in Hand. Actually, we spent a year on the waiting list. So now that there's a campus on the Carmel, a new campus, I hope our horrendous waiting lists will be a bit better. But we waited for a year, and thankfully we had room in the kindergarten. We joined the kindergarten, and we've been part of Hand in Hand since. And for me, the decision to join Hand in Hand, I think, really paid off in the last 2 years. So needless to say, the last 2 years were horrific. But I think really what kept me and my husband and our kids sane was the fact that we're part of this community, and the community really came together in really, really important junctions. So just a couple that I kind of really remember is the grandmother of a girl in the boys' class was murdered on the 7th of October in Be'eri. And the moment, it took a while to understand that's what happened. But the moment we understood that's what happened, the Arab parents really wanted to come to the Shiva, but they were also very understandably worried about how they would be received. And the father of this girl, the son of the woman who was murdered, said, "You absolutely have to come." And I remember I picked up a couple of Arab parents on the way, and we were driving to the Shiva, and we were still kind of talking between ourselves, and they were still unsure about how they would be received. But they were just received with open hands and open hearts. And I think it just made it abundantly clear to all of us that, we're humans and we see each other suffering, and we kind of all also knew that there was going to be suffering also unleashed on the other side, and that we're just going to be in this together as much as we can. And also, probably about a month into the war, we have a social coordinator or a community coordinator, and she sent out this questionnaire like, "Do you need help? And are you willing to give help?" And what I really liked about her questionnaire was she didn't ask, "Why do you need help?" So at this point, there were people who had family members, as I said, who were murdered on the 7th of October, or who were displaced within Israel. We had, parents who were receiving drafting letters into the army. We had parents with family and friends in the West Bank and Gaza, who were already very worried and knew, about what was probably going to unfold. But it was like a no questions asked policy. It wasn't like, "Why do you need help?" It's just, "Do you need help? And also, are you willing to give help, without asking any questions? And what help are you willing to give?" And I think to me, that kind of just embodies the hand-in-hand spirit. I had a conversation once with one of the fathers in the class, and he said, "We agree on 90% of the issues. On 8% of the issues, like we don't agree, but we can talk about them. And then there's 2% that we don't agree and are total deal breakers. And I think the question, what we kind of do daily and in hand is we try and focus on the 90% and try to kind of talk through the 8% and try to not let the 2% kind of ruin what we're trying to build together. And when you think about it, it's like, you know, it's always funny for me kind of to talk about it in like these terms because it's very radical in Israel. It's very radical to raise Arab and Jewish kids together in an equal kind of setting. But really, when you think about it, it's not radical at all. It's just kids. And they, you know, they become friends and they play together and I just think I'm giving them a gift. I'm giving them lots and lots of rubas, lots and lots of opportunities to see things in a complex manner, to understand different cultures, different religions, to understand that people are people, you know, regardless of their culture and their religion. And I think a lot of things that sometimes for us, for the parents, are kind of a bit more problematic or complex are just going to come naturally to them just because they've grown up together. And yeah, so I think I'm going to try and end on a funnier anecdote. So the war, there were so many stages to this war, but one of the stages was also, you know, there was here in the north, we had the war with Hezbollah, and there were alarms here. We were running daily into the bomb shelters. And, you know, my boys said, you know, we have a solution to the problem. And I was like, okay, what's your solution? And they said, well, we have, you know, Hezbollah, they speak Arabic. We have friends who speak Arabic. And, you know, we speak Hebrew like our government. So our friends who speak Arabic will speak to Hezbollah and we will speak to the government and we'll make them sit together and talk things out and find a solution so that we can, you know, stop with the alarms. And, you know, I was already like so moved. And I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. Look at the problem solving skills they're learning. And then they said, and if they don't sit together and talk, we'll show them who's boss. So, so like in 5 seconds, they reverted back into being kids. And yeah, I just think that's what Hand in Hand is about.
Thank you. And now we know how we reached the solution over the weekend. It was the children from Hand in Hand in Haifa. That's lovely.
Otherwise, beware. Yeah.
Otherwise, everywhere, right? Very clear. Rana, would you like to share your story?
Yes, hello everyone. Very excited to have you all here. So I am Rana and mother of June and Antoine, 13 and 10 years old, and I'm a high-tech engineer. So unlike Carney, I grew up in a Palestinian community with very little to no meaningful interaction with Jewish people, unfortunately. And my family and around, like they always told me, don't, just be careful and keep very low profile. Don't draw attention to yourself as a Palestinian. I have to say, I was afraid to say this word. I even rejected it for a certain time, and I was ashamed in front of my Palestinian friends who were not afraid. So it was all the time a conflict. How do I define myself? I wasn't politically involved, yet very much aware of the complex situation as a young person. And I found myself thinking a lot, even with friends and others, how do we define the parts of our identities? Where do we start? Are we Arab? Are we first Palestinians? Are we Israelis first? Is it a must to put the Israeli before the Palestinian? Or should we use the religion, which is easiest maybe? We were playing to organize those words to define who we are. And actually, I didn't find a common definition that matches everyone, and I started to accept it that it can be different for even people in same house. So I didn't feel comfortable with it, but that's what I had, and I grew up actually not comfortable showing my identity, and it's really a terrible feeling. Probably later I understood that this is a minority problem. Being a minority in Israel, a weak minority, wasn't easy, but it really works for me not to be political. Okay, so growing up Palestinian in Israel was hard. it included a lot of injustice. So I kept my attention off the reality and just protected myself, and it really worked for me. So I just focused, as many other people around me, focused on succeeding and proving that I'm a good person, building my future. That's actually what was my main goal. So identity was put aside, or wasn't anyway clear. I can say it is like that until now. So my first real meetings with Jewish people was actually when I reached to university. I have to say the language was terrible. Even I was good at school, but the language wasn't comfortable. And I tried to make it not disclose me, but it didn't work. They discovered that I am Arab. So I studied engineering and started working in a company with more people, Jewish people, and I really met amazing people. Even my very best friend until now, she is Jewish and she's my soulmate. And I didn't take her permission, Karni, like you, but it happens. It doesn't mean that every meeting was terrible, but there was something stuck. Even the relationships, the good ones at school or at work, at the university or at work, they did not continue afterwards. So it made me think, what's going on? Why is this so stuck? So this really struck me. And I was thinking, what's blocking us? Of course, the complexity of the situation was a good reason, but there has to be something to do, and I didn't know what, especially when I was not comfortable with myself. So actually, I also realized back then that there was no room for me to be honest about what I think, about who I am. I have to be very careful all the time. So this doesn't work. Once I had children, I always thought the frameworks of the Jewish frameworks, preschools, educational places, that they are better than ours. Should I put my kids in such school? And then I, of course, learned about the very highest complexities that other people who did it faced. And I didn't want that. So I, of course, had the only option to still use the Arabic, so my kids would grow like me. But there was a gift at a certain point that I heard from a friend about hand in hand. One little kindergarten that actually joins Arabic and Jewish children together in the same place, 50-50, with two teachers, one Arab teacher and one Jewish teacher, and there was no question for me. That was the place that I would put my kids in. And it happened. And actually, I found myself so involved in this place because it needed a lot of work, a lot of volunteering. And actually, I found another house for me from day one. And I also found myself being involved and having to be involved politically. That was not my way until now. I was kind of brave to be talking politics, not even politics, just to talk about the situation, the identity with the new people that I made, the people that have also kids and want to have them living together in real existence, real coexistence with other kids. So that actually brought me to my next level. It did change my whole life. It made me, throughout the years, be able to actually I did to be able to define who I am versus the situation. It happened because of the amazing talks that we had, the very safe space that we could talk and not be afraid that we will be judged. I wasn't even afraid of my accent. Actually, it did improve throughout the years, but it was comfortable. It was challenging. We had many challenges within the conversations, but also having buildings and fighting with the municipality to accept to give us a school building and so on and so on. But I felt so comfortable that this place is actually my place in Israel. It cannot be other place. So that was for me as an adult after 20 years of a big gap, not meeting the other side. Actually, and then I can share about my kid, first kid, like growing in hand. She hasn't no idea what's going on, but after a few years, when she was 10, I can share one moment that I saw the impact not only on me, I saw it on her. She was asked to stand in front of big crowd, introducing hand in hand to the to people who probably didn't hear about it. And she wanted to write her words to say what she wants to say on her own. She didn't ask my help. And I wondered what she's going to say. And then I found her talking. She said, we are different people, different nationalities, studying together. And it doesn't matter that we are different. We learn, we know how to accept each other and even be friends. And she feels equal here. And then it really hit me hard because I didn't feel equal and my kid feels equal. I was on tears. I was so happy and so proud of her talking like that. And that was a moment that I said, yes, hand in hand, for not only for my kid, hopefully for all the kids. So yes, my kid is still a minority in Israel, but she feels stronger than I was. And she speaks much better the language already now. And I believe that this will lead her and also the other children face each other, know about themselves more, while because they know that they are not alone and they have the others. And that's amazing. Actually, that is amazing. And in my eyes, I do see us as a bubble now, especially after the 2 years that we had, the terrible 2 years when I thought everything will fall apart. Actually, I saw hand in hand community sticking, as Carly said, sticking even more together. I discovered that we did build muscles along the years to communicate better and to listen better, to talk more confidently about what we feel. And I see this is it. This is it. And now for growing, I do see us growing the school and make it a much better school, so people would come for the school and then get the opportunity to know what I'm talking about.
Thank you. Thank you both. I'm really struck, and I say this as someone who lived in Israel for most of my adult life. And Israel is a tiny country, and yet we live such separate lives. Um, and this really, what you're listening to, everybody, really is a unique situation where Arabs and Jews are coming together, and on a daily basis, and in a non-transactional form. And this really a very big part of what makes it such a radical framework and such a great vehicle for change. I want to encourage you, please, to put your questions in the chat, and we will try to get as many as possible. I do have one or two questions here. Rani, you talked about building muscles during this terrible time. Can you say something about what you believe or wish will be possible now?
Can I do again? Say again, please.
Yeah. So I was struck how you talked about building muscles during this terrible time. We had to dig deep with things that we weren't used to bringing out. So can you say something about what you believe or wish would be possible going forward?
Yes. So building building the muscles, actually it wasn't in the last 2 years. The building was built like planted as seeds, like at the moment that we started. Now we just got the fruits. Okay. Now we saw when the time we needed this, we used those muscles to communicate. So I would say we had many challenges during the in national days. How do we celebrate them? How do we communicate them to the kids, at which age, and so on and so on. We let that to some people to handle it, some professional people to tell us what to do. But we always wanted to talk, to share. How do you feel? How do I feel? Especially on that day, I have to tell you, in the beginning, it started like fights. We did fight. I didn't, of course. Some people fight, raised voices, and even and had to handle it. Okay, we raised voices, but we were together into this. Sometimes we could handle this by telling, great, it is what we feel, and it is the complex situation, and we want to raise voices because we don't know otherwise, because if everyone is talking from his own story, from his own perspective, like I see my vision, my point of view. And then we started to talk about, okay, let's see the other's point of view. We were focusing on one side, let's talk only about that side and practice listening. So maybe I sound more theoretically too good to be true. I have to say it's not perfect, but I believe when I saw us talking in the beginning of the last war, of this war, hopefully the last, I realized there was amazing listening to from both sides. And I believe some people will tell me, no, you haven't listened to me yet. And what I say to that, I invite you to come and I will listen. And I hope more and more people will practice it. We have to practice this.
I love that. It's something we don't just have, we need to practice it. Really, when you talked about building muscle, I was thinking of it only happens when you go to the gym and or however you work out and do it on a regular routine. And these schools really do present a regular routine for our children. So thank you. Kani, you shared how from early after October 7th, you and other parents knew you were all going to be in this together. Can you describe how this was different for other Israeli Jews in your circles, in your social circle? And maybe tell us something about how other Israeli Jews related to you being part of Hand in Hand during these last 2 years.
I think kind of the first automatic reaction to October 7th, mine included, was just like being terrified. And we had this routine where suddenly we'd make sure everything was locked, the doors, the windows. And I think probably for people who aren't kind of in this environment, there was even more, I think there is already fear of Palestinians and Arabic and Arabs to begin with. But it was just kind of like exemplified because right now, this kind of proves all of our fears were right all along. And there was a lot of kind of, in the beginning, I think I don't know if people remember this, but there was a lot of like kind of warmongering that now that this has happened, that the Israeli Arabs are going to try to do some kind of violence and uprising, and actually the exact opposite happened. There's a lot of stories about heroism of Bedouin civilians who saved Jewish party goers from the Nova, and there were a lot of joint like Arab Jewish basically, it was exactly the opposite of kind of what people, I think, thought was going to happen. But that was, I think, kind of the knee-jerk reaction. Everybody was kind of, was even more fearful and even more kind of closing within themselves. And yeah, I think, for people, maybe not so much in Haifa, which is more mixed, but in other cities, the moment, they hear Arabic, they're kind of, they're already kind of looking behind their shoulders to see what's going on. Who is this? Can we trust this person? Should we call the police? And I think we just didn't have that. To me, it was obvious that, that this is not representative of like what's going on, isn't representative of this, huge, large collective, and that it's made up of people. And it was very obvious to me also that the community was going to come together. And I think, we came together, like I kind of relate to what Rana said about like the muscle building. I think the muscle building isn't only in like all of there is a political kind of like conversation, debate group within the parents. And some of the parents choose to join, but I think probably right, Rana, most of the parents don't come on a regular basis. We live together, we have play dates together. The moment, school, we had almost, I think, 2 months of school where we didn't have school because there was the war with Hezbollah. We organized here in our home movie viewings. We had 10 kids come in each time because that's what our bomb shelter can hold. And all the time, all the parents were in contact with each other. Like, does anybody need any help? How can we get the kids to meet up so that they can continue having, a childhood and time to play together and see each other. We mapped out all of the playgrounds that have bomb shelters. And I think just the fact that we kept on living together throughout all of this, I think just, brought us all even closer together. And And yeah, my kids when they hear Arabic, they don't look over their shoulder. And my little girl sings songs, kindergarten songs in Arabic. So I think that's a large difference.
Yeah, thanks. I love that. In times of tension, when as a Jew you hear Arabic, and vice versa, to feel comfortable what you're hearing. It's not just they don't turn and look, they don't look behind them, but also you're understanding what people are saying, and you're feeling a lot more part of a community, a part of a society where you don't have to worry about the other. So I thank you. Rana, I have a question for you here. You talked about the experience of having to be very careful of what you say and what part of your identity you share, both as a child and a young woman. And then you said about how your daughter knows she is equal. So can you say a little bit more about how your children experience their identity as young Palestinians?
Yes, let's say it's a bit too early for them because once they are young, we did not fill them with this question. They didn't have to, as I did. Um, Now when they're older, it really depends on the house how you want to educate your children. Some families, some friends. I think I'm raising my kid as my parents raised me, like in a way that still be careful. And I can't invent something I am not, right? But they are seeing what we are doing for hand in hand because we believe that we have to live to have a real existence together in Israel. And I think that will build again her identity to know who she is now. But I think other families would want more to emphasize the Palestinian side in their identity to make them know what's going on and talk about it as a regular basis in the family. And I think it's okay. Any either way is okay. So it really depends. I don't know. I have to say that I don't know. And since day one, I was wondering the moment that my girl will turn on 18 and her friends will be invited to the army, and she will not. And I was even crying when I was talking about that because I really had no idea. And I was afraid that I'm putting her in that situation because that might, maybe not that they will hear about it already before, of course. So I don't know exactly, but I do know that it's much better for her than what I grew up or what Karni could tell about the other side, not knowing about the real existence of the other side. Okay, and knowing that there is other side will make her know herself better. I hope she will make more of the Palestinian dances and things. She only listens to Western music, but this could also improve to keep the Palestinian not education traditions, at least the artistic, the dance, the music. It's so important. I just don't want her to be afraid. And I have to tell something about a very latest story that I had yesterday. I wanted to tell my friends in the sea, know them for a year, older ones, about this experience that I'm having in this webinar. And they said, okay, let's practice. And the third word I said, I'm Palestinian, I couldn't continue. That was where I stopped and started a conversation. One of them said, okay, that's it. She blocked me. And I was like, what happened? So I have muscles, I know how to communicate. I did happen to make her more soft and don't be afraid of the word and tell me why she is afraid. And we even shared that I was afraid of it. And in the end, she said, thank you for your center. That's what she said, my center, because it helped her not fight with me, and I was not fighting with her, and we had about an hour of talk. I was amazed by this, and I think the fact that I'm doing this when I met people at age of 20, my kids will do it much easier than I'm doing it. And I believe that hand in hand will still give them the tools and the opportunity to be able to do this.
Thank you. I actually want to follow on from that and ask both of you. If do you have stories of when either an Israeli, a Jewish or an Arab student would come in upset or crying, maybe having lost someone during October 7th or lost somebody in the war in Gaza? Um, how did teachers react? How do students react? Do you have any stories from what you've heard from your children or from teachers?
I think once again, my children are quite young. Like my eldest are 8 years old. And I think for the instance with a grandmother from class, it was we explained that she died in the war, but we didn't go into the particular details. First of all, I have to say that changed. When this happened, they were 6 years old. They were in first grade. And now as they grow older, they kind of know more and more. And also, I have to say, I kept on thinking when Anna was speaking about how she's not like wasn't politically active, and it's kind of like the 180s. I've been politically active all my life, but I think, I have the privilege that I know that I can be politically active and not pay a personal price. So my children also have been going to demonstrations, and as they grow older, they kind of know more of what's going on around them. And I feel the school tries to keep things very age appropriate. So when they're in the younger ages, there is also around, as Anna said, that like the national days, Day of Remembrance and Independence Day, these, they're tricky. And so like in first grade, for example, they talked about the teachers pretended there's always, each class has an Arab teacher and a Jewish teacher. And so the teachers said, we're fighting over some object, and the class had to kind of resolve kind of together and help the teachers come together and find a solution. And, that was kind of their way of talking about how there's different views about this day and how to kind of come together and see the common ground. And yeah, also around incidences like this, I think, first of all, I think that, the parents, we don't lie, and the school also doesn't. If something happens, they say, this is what happened. This is the reality. This is what we live in. So there isn't, you try and not give all the gritty details because it's just not age appropriate, but we don't sugarcoat the reality. We say what's going on and try and come together and have like debates, once again, that are age appropriate. Maybe Anna can speak more about the older groups. I know that in the older groups, there's even more kind of discussions that kind of go down into the details of things. But yeah, I think just the emphasis is on telling the truth and being empathetic. Obviously, if something happened to someone, it doesn't matter why. It's horrible.
Yeah, I don't have very, very specific story that is connected exactly to my daughter, who is 13. But I think there is some kind of tension about this. Let's say I know about the children of my friend who's not in school, not in our school, but they know each other, and they were crying hard because of a brother of their classmate who was killed in this war, and they were crying hard. Like the whole focus was with them because they were crying on a very real actual case that they know that body, and that the way that we handled it, my children were together with us. They didn't have to handle it on their own. I don't know what happened at school. I have honestly, I'm not sure. But they saw that at this moment we give only empathy. Like, we are empathy with the feeling of that person. It is strong, it is difficult. We don't have to solve the problem at that moment. Even if on the other side, another friend of ours had a family in Yad Biyad, right? Who had a family of 50 people were killed in one shot. And once someone talked about his case here in Israel, he immediately fetched the other case in Gaza, and it was already tensed, and we didn't know how to handle it besides being with a lot of empathy to both, like to whoever gives a personal story, okay? When the mother of the same guy that Karni talked about was, I went to this Shiva, like how do you call it, Shiva? So I went there, although I didn't know the people. I just went there because I felt I want to be there, and I was also afraid. But then my kids knew that I was going there. I did share with them, but it's very light. There was no big event that I could talk about that was directly, they had to handle it on their own. And honestly, I have to say that I always wanted to keep the school as a school, because once we get more and more involved with politics, this will put our school in danger. And I think the fact that politics is really messed up around us, we have to keep the school safe, and the teachers have to be safe. So I think their professionalism will handle, and they do handle it in a very professional way anyway. We do count on them.
Thank you. And I want to say, we are talking about the different age appropriateness of the experiences of the children, the students. Certainly in the high school, it was obviously something that had to be worked on a lot more, because they were obviously far more exposed to the news and what was happening. And the same amongst our alumni, those who are at university, that we continue to bring together. One caveat I want to share is in Jerusalem, the high school, there was a decision to, at the very beginning, to have Arab students meeting separately with Jewish students for them to process their own experiences before they came back together. And it was the students who turned around after a couple of hours that day and said, "We don't want to do this. We want to come back together." And that didn't make it any easier or any less complicated, but they wanted to deal with it together because they have grown up through a system where they have been coping with these things together. It's a great question. Thank you. I'm sorry I'm
Yeah.
not seeing anybody else.
Sorry, yeah, just to point out, we don't have hand in hand in Haifa. I think the oldest kids are now in 7th grade. And yeah, now we just received today a WhatsApp from the teachers that with the ceasefire, there are going to be conversations with the children in the different classrooms about what's going on and the meaning, and kind of letting them to vent, that are going to be age appropriate. And they said that they're going to bring in the 7th graders just to kind of workshop together with the 6th graders. So I'm guessing that in the 6th and 7th grade, they'll be going more into the nitty gritty, and then rather than in the lower classes. But definitely there's going to be a conversation.
Yeah, that's tomorrow actually happening. And that's 8th grade, by the way, I have to say. And we have 9th grade. So I guess the two highest grades. My daughter is one of them, thanks.
We don't
So
have a high
far
school.
away from me.
We don't have a high school in Haifa, but it's certainly, we believe that's the next city that we will be opening up a high school as we bring more students through into grade 9. And I just there was a question about waiting lists. There are waiting lists at most of our schools. There's a big waiting list in Haifa. And I do want to share that one of the wonderful things this year, amongst all the turmoil, we've actually been able to open a second preschool campus, which is going to double the number of children we have in preschool, thanks to the Krupp family in Boston. And those of you who are in the Boston area, please do join us on November 10th when we're there to thank them. But I do want to stress that we are focusing on these early ages, because once a child reaches the second, third grade, they're becoming proficient in both languages. And it's actually a lot harder to recruit at that point, because we need to be recruiting children in the higher years of that with the language skills to cope with both languages. So thank you both on that. Let's see. Rana, there's a question here for you. When you talked about going to university and learning Hebrew and how did you? There's a question. How did you learn Hebrew? If it wasn't obvious something that was happening in school, and how will your children be better prepared for learning roles in Israeli society?
Okay. Wow. I don't can answer a professional question, give a professional answer for that question. I did learn Hebrew at my school, and I did know how to speak the language, of course. But when I was in the field to practice it seriously, it was challenging. But I said that not the problem is not only the language, it was the accent that immediately disclosed me they knew that I am Arab, and I'm ashamed now that I had to do this and kind of feel that I have to hide in a way. Of course, I'm much more confident now, but at least now I know that my kid doesn't have to do it. I hope so. First, her language is a mother language now, both Arabic and Hebrew. I think even English is becoming mother language because they are so developed with their brain to speak languages. And second, she didn't live 20 years alone or 18 years on her own. Okay, she is living the togetherness already now at the age of since 1 year old. She is fine.
Thank
Yeah.
you. I'm going to ask this. Go ahead, Connie.
No, I just wanted to say about the language. So, I mean, if it's not clear, most Jews don't speak any Arabic. And increasingly, I have to say, as a physician, I encounter Arabs who don't speak any Hebrew. The younger generation, actually, a lot of the times I have patients coming in where the parents who are 50, 60 will speak Hebrew, but the younger generation, the 20, 30-year-olds, won't speak Hebrew. And I think, you know, it's a gap where, yeah, if you don't know each other's languages, how are you going to communicate? Yeah, so just putting a bit more perspective into the language issue.
Thank you. So I have a question here, and I want you to not only answer the question, but also if you disagree with the premise for the question, then to say so. And the question here is, does it worry you that hand in hand is more popular among the more elite populations, but not widespread, at least right now, with less educated or so I'm going to throw that out to both of you on that, and I'm kind of interested to hear what you have to say.
I think that's it's a good point. You know, it's a good point. And we can't, I think, run away from it. I definitely think there is a bit of an elite meeting the elite. But there's two things about that. One, I think it's important. You know, hopefully our children, you know, both the Palestinian and the Jewish Israelis, hopefully you know, they're the leaders of tomorrow. And I think it's important that, you know, that they have the viewpoint that we're talking about all the time. And maybe, you know, maybe change is going to grow from Rana's daughter or from one of my boys or so I think even though it is, yeah, a bit of an elite meeting of an elite, it's still very important. And the second thing is, I think, is we are trying to keep it as accessible as possible. So in Haifa, it's a municipality school. And the tuition, I saw also somewhere on the chat, somebody asked about tuition. The tuition is just like any other public school. There is an addition of a very small amount of money to hand in hand, which I know that there's a lot of parents that if they can't afford, then that's wavered, but it's nowhere near. So Haifa, there's a lot of, for some weird reason, there's a lot of totally private educational systems here. The Reali, which is considered like amazing, and it costs 20,000 shekels a year. We're not even closer there. You know, so whoever wants to study in hand in the school can do so and is welcome to do so financially. The school itself right now is situated in Kiryat Eliezer, which is a low socioeconomic neighborhood. We have kids coming in from the neighborhood who study in the school just because it's a good school. I feel like Rana and I have been talking a lot about, like, you know, the philosophy and and Arabs and Jews and Palestinians and Israelis, but bottom line, I would not send my kids to an educational system that I don't, you know, that I think isn't good for them. And our school is just also a good school, a school that, you know, that sees the kids. They're all the time trying to innovate in the way they teach. All three kids go every morning, you know, happily. And we have now more and more families coming into the school just because we have a good name and they're from the neighborhood and not necessarily because they have this, you know, crazy ideology. So I don't think we're going to change everything overnight. It's, you know, it's a very slow process, sometimes on a very small, you know, level. But it's something.
Thank you. Rana, would you like to add to that?
Wow, no, I did laugh in the beginning because really it was very privileged people with very kind of comfortable situation in financially that we sent our kids to this journey, like it's an adventurous place, right? to let go from the Arabic side, all the uh, um, private schools with the very best grades ever in the country. They're known, and to say I'm not sending my kids to that place and take this chance here for the values, for the additional values. I really say it's not only this place, like additional values that they are getting here. It's something we had to be kind of special people to be able to do this big decision. Okay, lately, once we became a known school and it's much established and really managed really well, people are coming more and more, and I even face like problems with that because many kids who don't manage in other schools actually want to join Yad B'Yad hand in hand, sorry, because it's a kind of alternative. And we have to always emphasize it is not an alternative education in matter of what to learn. It's alternative in the way we pass the values to the kids. And that's why I always say that our school should be handling those people, not rejecting anyone. We should accept everyone from any background with any difficulties. And let's say all the kids now have difficulties with the screens and the ADHD, and let's not talk about that. But our school should be able to handle all kinds of challenges with children because we are the place for them.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you both. I'm very mindful of time here. We could stay on for another hour with you. You're both so engaging. And I do want to stress to everyone on the call that American Friends of Hand in Hand does have scholarship funds so that no one is turned away for lack of funds. And this was a really important principle. And I just want to mention we have Lee Gordon on the call, who is the co-founder, who has been with us for 25 years since it all began. And I remember when I started, Lee said to me, it was very important from the beginning that with everything that makes us different, we must ensure that we are an exemplary educational institution in order to, that has to be the minimum in order to attract people to want to try out this crazy experiment at our schools. And I think we're extremely fortunate. We have incredible principals in all 6 regions where there are schools who really are leading this for us. So I want to thank you both. This has been really amazing. There's some really powerful themes that came up here. The not having to hide, not having to feel shame, to be feeling equal within the society, within the place where we live, and to listening and making space for in each other's pain. You have been through an incredibly difficult period. The whole schools and the communities have been through such a really difficult thing, and that making space for each other and safe space for each other in such a difficult time is incredible work. And I'm sure it's exhausting work as well for everyone living in Israel. So thank you both so much, and thank you for doing this. And thank you for joining us and sharing these themes. I want to thank everyone for being on this call. I want to make it very clear we could not do this without you. American Friends in Hand has a critical role raising the funds so that these schools can happen and can happen with all the additional programs we're doing, including the communities program we have at each school, which is funded from here. So please, I have 2 requests for you. First of all, we're going to be sending out an edited version of this webinar. So it'll be shorter and it will have the important people, Rana and Carney speaking and not me. So that I want to ask you not only to listen to it again, but to share it with friends to help spread the word of who we are and what we do. And as we come into the last quarter of 2025, and I think we're all ready to finish that and get into 2026, to remember us again in your own philanthropy, because again, we cannot do this work without you. And thank you for helping support us through the years and what we're doing. That's it. Thank you everyone for being a part of this. Thank you, Rana. Thank you, Carney. Thank you to all the staff who put this together as well. And we hope to see you all again on another webinar. So thank you for joining.